It's time for Victoria's Gluten-Free Gastro Gab, the information source for your gluten-free lifestyle. Today, Victoria talks with Sherry Hess, chef founder of The Flavor Remedy. And now here's your host, Victoria Wolf.
Welcome to the show. I am so excited you're here, and we are here today with Sherry Hess, the founder of The Flavor Remedy, and we are going to talk all about flavor. Every flavor that there is, and what, there's 7?
You could go on and on, but yeah.
Main flavors.
I would say here we talk about 5 basics. If you kind of bring in Ayurveda or traditional Chinese, you get 7.
So, okay, we're not going to cover that
let's focus on 5 today.
5 is good. 5 is good. It's like the 5 senses, the 5 flavors.
Exactly.
We're good.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about your background and how you have taken this kind of path, I think, and ended up all about flavor, which is a really amazing place to be.
Very much this kind of a path for sure. I always kind of try to figure out where to start the story, and I think the easiest place to kind of start and just reflect back a little bit is, not that long ago I had a spice company of my own, and that was inspired by my culinary school. My talents in cooking have always been around flavor itself. I'm one of those people that doesn't need a recipe. I can, taste a little here, taste a little there, wing it, and put things together and just make it taste good. I'm kind of anti-recipe, which people don't always like about me.
Recipes, as I say, I'm going to say this every show now, and people will be like, she's going to say it again. Yeah. They're a suggestion, just like the speed limit.
Right. And part of what happens is, as I continue down the flavor journey, I really want people to understand how to manipulate that, right? Why they don't have to stay attached to recipes. But basically what happened was Legendary Spice kind of was this revelation to me, because I was creating spice blends based upon flavor, balance of flavor, things that tasted good, helping people to cook healthy foods and be able to incorporate not only the flavor of the spices, but the benefits, right? So my own personal health journey, and part of course, why I'm here in the gluten-free realm of gorgeousness with you is that I was diagnosed with an autoimmune, and it was right after culinary school, and I wanted to go home and make my family bread and pasta and do all the things, and I just got sick.
Aww.
And I'm sure that's a common theme, with your guests here. And doctors had no answers, and I just went down the food path even deeper. I was already, deep into organic and really feeling passionate about what was happening to our food system in general. And that's why I went to the culinary school that I went to, because it was focused on local and organic and taking care of the environment. So when I got sick, I had to dive even deeper into food. So my healing process really was through food and supplements. So, fast forward to when I decided to create Legendary Spice, it really was based on my history. I wanted to get into the kitchen again, and I wanted to help other people do it easily. I always knew that flavor was important.
So you had to find ways to make foods that foods you can't eat, obviously substitutions,
right,
taste as good as the originals, or taste well enough that you weren't missing those.
Right. So the easiest thing for me was spices, right? And they were already part of what I was taking as a supplement. So when I was healing and going through this kind of autoimmune challenge situation, I was taking supplements that had green tea and ashwagandha and cinnamon and ginger and turmeric and all the things that I'm like, well, why the hell aren't we just putting this on our food?
Yeah,
right?
Why are we taking a supplement?
Right.
Yeah. It's probably more potent eating it rather than as it's been processed down to a supplement?
In some ways. It depends on, we here in the Western world like to, instead of treat things with preventative medicine and herbal healing, we like to, throw as much as we can at it to try to cure something that's pretty broken to begin with. So that's a little bit of an issue, but also why I wanted to put these spices on our food, right? So it's like this regular thing and not a taking a pill kind of thing. Well, so the long story short of Legendary Spice is that I love the concept. People love the spices, but as you know, working in the food industry is challenging.
Yes, to say the least.
Trying to put, a product out there to deal with, everything that I would need to face in order to put that on, grocery store shelves or get it into restaurants or, sell it wholesale. It just wasn't a energy and expense that I was willing to Be as brave as you are.
And at the end of the day, there's no guarantee that you're actually helping people at the level you really set out to help them at. That wasn't the right avenue to go, is what you realized. And yeah, a product can only do so much, especially if you don't get to maintain or have that connection with the end user. Then you can just hope. You just put the product out there and hope it's doing or making the change that you want in people's lives. But actually working with people on a deeper level is really going to be the change that I think you're hoping.
Yes, absolutely. So basically, what happened with the whole concept of flavors, I just started thinking bigger. Like I have a little bit of Ayurvedic training. I'm a dabbler. Like I've got a little bit of wisdom in a lot of different things, and essentially I just kind of came to this place where I recognized that like flavor is so much more than the way we're treating it, right? Like we as humans are born with these beautiful five senses, and we're so trusting of our sense of sight and our hearing and the sense of touch. Like all of those things are no-brainers to us, right? When you see something, you believe it. You hear it, you know what it is. But taste has been completely, it's an anomaly, right? No one's paying attention to it as a true, actual source of information for our bodies. So I started really thinking about like, well, it has to be doing something for us, right? Like it has to be feeding us real information. And why is it that we can't just trust that what we crave is our body talking to us?
Yes. Well, most of us are very bad. I myself that's why it took me so long to figure out what was making me sick, because I wasn't listening. I mean, our bodies tell us things all the time. Pain is a way of your body telling you something. Discomfort, whatever, gastrointestinal distress, headaches. I think it's
brain
all
fog. There's all kinds of
your
things.
body talks to you all the time, and we don't always listen. And even when we do listen, we're not sure what it wants all the time. So what you're saying is, if you listen, it's like, oh my God, I really need a pickle right now.
What is it?
Yeah, what is it? What is in that pickle that my body is craving? What flavors or what nutrients or
So I get chills thinking about it, because like that's how we're built, right? But you can't just sit there and say, well, just eat what you crave, because so much has happened to our food, right? So much has happened to the way food is grown, to the way flavors have been manufactured, right? Like we're just, when I say we, I think I probably have to categorize it as like Americans. We have a lot of opportunities and a lot of wonderful things here, but with that comes a lot of like manufactured food, right?
And a messed up food system,
and a messed up food system, and the soils are being depleted, and the nutrients aren't showing up in soils. So we need the ranch dressing to put on our broccoli to make it palatable.
Yeah, because broccoli, I love broccoli, but you get some bad broccoli.
And I don't even know if we know what good broccoli tastes like anymore.
That's a really organic is probably the closest to it, but it's like you want your kids to eat the broccoli, and you just want them to eat the broccoli, and you're like, oh no, don't put ranch on. It's like, here, you eat the broccoli without ranch. You're not going to do that either.
And it's I think,
and ranch isn't even ranch. Ranch is a conglomerate of chemicals.
It's a bunch of fats,
unless you make it from scratch. But
so I just kind of started really digging deep into the 5 flavors that we experience. If we keep it to those 5 categories, are salty, sweet, sour, bitter, and umami, right?
Okay, so salty, let's break it down. Salty is pretty obvious, salt. Sweet comes from sugar or other forms of sugar. So bitter, I think bitter is one that people don't understand. So listen, what are some bitter flavors? Like vegetables, foods?
And bitter is my favorite, because bitter is what
I discovered bitter.
I love a lot of bitter stuff. And it's my favorite because it's the underdog, like the sense of taste, which is the underdog sense of taste. I always say I stand up for the underdog as the sense of taste. Bitter is the thing. It's the magic. It's what's missing in our lives. It really is, in so many ways. We mask bitter. The food industry masks bitter. We tell ourselves that bitter isn't good. If you hear, I actually listened to this podcast one time. And it was a woman she wrote a book. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she wrote a book about flavor. And she was speaking to the Google audience and talking about flavor. And she's like, well, bitter is poison. And I was like, what?
No,
well,
it's not.
But there is a little bit of truth to it. The truth is that
some poisons that are bitter, and that tells you that they are poisonous.
Right. So this is why like bitter is so sexy to me. It is if you think of it like a bitter pill to swallow, right? So we think of bitter as medicine, and if you think of medicine, if you take too much medicine, it's poison. But if you have just the right amount, it's beneficial. Right?
So what are some bitter foods?
So bitter foods would be, I mean, the easiest are, and you know, the one that gets a lot of press these days is turmeric. So spices are a big part of it. You know, turmeric, cinnamon, the rind and zest of the zest of a citrus. All these things are detoxifying. And that's the thing about the bitter flavors is that they will detoxify. They help with antimicrobial, antiviral, there's lots of things that bitter flavors can do. And the key, and this is why the food industry takes bitter out of foods, is that it also helps you to feel full.
Oh, we don't want that because we want you to eat more food. Right. So isn't like kale, broccoli, all of the greens, those are bitters.
Absolutely. Mustard greens, all kinds.
I love
bitter
all the greens.
Is really present in almost every vegetable and fruit that there is.
And when you cook those vegetables, the goal is to reduce the bitterness.
Right.
I mean, every time there's a green on Chopped, you've got Alex and whoever else is on the panel going, that's a bitter food. They better figure out a way to make it less bitter. Yeah.
But the thing is, you can, right?
Yeah, and you tone down that bitter because a little bit of bitter is good. A lot of it, it's just like in drinks, making drinks, bitters.
Oh, absolutely.
Makes a drink so amazing. Yeah, some whiskey with some bitters. And I think bitter is the most unexplained sense of flavor or sense of flavor. I don't know if that's correct, but flavor. And I think most people hate that. What else? There's some other foods that are bitter. I looked it up because I heard something somewhere and I'm like, wait, I love bitter. And then I went and I looked at all the...
Yeah, there's lots of things. So, you know, in other cultures, they use, like Indian cooking, they use bitter melon.
Oh, yeah, I've never had bitter melon. I need to try that.
I want to go actually juice bitter melon and just drink it because I feel like, you know, in some of the plant medicine courses that I've taken too, I've learned some interesting things about, I mean, even cinnamon, like I said. Bitter foods can be used to help control things like your blood sugar levels, right? I mean, insulin resistance is becoming a really big thing. People are, you know, there's more and more type 2 diabetes, and the bitter flavors can actually help because it stimulates digestion too.
Right, which is what it was used for as aperitifs, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, and that was a digestive aid. And so one instance where people from hundreds of years ago knew better than we. I think they knew about food in a much better, more intelligent way than we do.
Oh, absolutely, because they didn't have they didn't have all the information. I always, you know, when I talk about this underdog sense of taste too, is you know, it's the only sense that requires us as the human to make a choice, right?
Oh, that's true.
It's the only time, like you can choose what music you want to listen to, but you can't stop yourself from hearing the neighbors screaming at each other next door, right?
You can choose what you see, and I guess you could close your eyes, but still, you don't really make choices. It's like, I'm going to choose salty over sweet, over bitter, over sour.
Well, and then when you have that choice factor and your brain gets involved, that opens the door wide open for everyone to tell you what to eat.
Right.
So introduce paleo versus keto versus vegan versus, like, everybody's going to tell you what's good for you.
Right. But only you know what's good for you.
Listening to your own body.
Listening to your body, I think, is something that hardly anybody does, and that's why we have all these fad diets that have existed throughout time. And not to put down the keto and paleo movements, but I mean, to eliminate
they work for somebody, right?
Some of them, but to eliminate an entire food group for the sake of losing weight doesn't seem to make sense. I had to eliminate 2 entire food groups for the sake of being healthy.
Right.
And that's bad enough.
Hard enough.
Yeah.
Right.
And and then if you look at the replacement, and I'll rail on cauliflower crust, all about it's like, it's great, it's keto, it's paleo, but it's eggs and cheese, you know, mashed together in a crust. I mean, does your body really need more eggs and cheese?
Right.
I mean,
right.
It's like it's very simple. I did that way back when Atkins came out. I tried it.
I've tried them all.
Yeah, and it was like, oh my God, I couldn't eat. And I was a vegetarian at the time, so I wasn't, the only way to get my protein was eggs and cheese. Right. That's back when I think I could do dairy. I don't know. I convinced myself I could. But I remember cooking fried eggs in this like oodles of butter in the skillet.
Oh, and like all the guilt is gone, right?
Yeah,
You're like, this is the best thing for me.
Yeah, all the fat you want, all the meat, all the cheese. And then I'm like, oh, this is not good. I'm missing. I can't just eat this. I was like, I really wanted a salad, but the salad had too many carbs too. I couldn't even eat that in my salad. I'm like, wait a minute, something that doesn't allow you to eat salad a diet, there's got to be something wrong with that, because I really should probably be eating the salad more than the eggs, soaking in butter.
Well, no kidding. And you know what? It's so true. It's like, I swear, another one of the downfalls of what we've done to nutrition and eating here is, is breaking it out into the simple, concept of carbs and proteins and fats and, all the things that we talk about as what you should and shouldn't eat. It's like, if you're not looking at the whole food and taking in everything into account that you're putting into your body, and you're just looking at, like, I call this the chocolate steak syndrome. I think I may have mentioned this to you before, but the protein shakes, right? So we're jamming all this protein into this shake. And again, like you said, not bashing, because we have so many lacks of nutrition and needs for things that are healthier in our society. But we're taking this protein and we're jamming, what's equivalent to like a 32-ounce steak into a glass,
an 8-ounce glass of
and then we're putting chocolate flavor on it just so we can get it down. And it's like, for me, I want to trust that the flavors are going to represent the nutrition that I'm getting. And to make to make protein taste like sugar and chocolate, I'm like, how am I ever going to know what it is my body wants when this is not representative of a real food whatsoever?
Right. And so what you're saying is, by eating things that aren't real food, and I have my little air quotes here, your body becomes trained against knowing it loses its ability to talk to you about what it really wants, because you're not giving it the right information.
Yeah, because our bodies will adjust. I mean, I think anybody who's ever eliminated sugar from their diet, right? And even to go so far as to eliminate fruit from their diet, which I also think is crazy, but when you eliminate sugar for a long period of time and then you go to taste it again, what happens?
It's so sweet.
It's
and
sickening sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's not a sign that your body adjusts to what you feed it, then,
Yeah, just like when you eliminate high fat, a lot of, processed high fat fried foods or whatever, when you eat some of that, it's like, oh.
Yeah, your body, When you elevate your body, it doesn't want to go back.
Right. I mean, after going gluten-free and I had to start making everything gluten and dairy-free, I got taste buds back. And what's interesting, and now that you say this, when Rich and I met, there's a lot of foods I had never eaten in my life that I didn't like, and I knew exactly how to eat. I knew what I should have been eating, but I never did. I did do. I won't say never.
There's psychology behind food too, so you can't disregard that.
That's true. But since I met Rich, there's a list. It's so long of all the foods I now eat that I would never consider before. And I was wondering, it's like, okay, I achieved a palate, or something woke up, and so I guess I stopped eating. By going gluten-free, I stopped eating a lot of the processed stuff, a lot of things, because I was a vegetarian, but I ate tons of veggie burgers and veggie dogs and all that replacement, and I don't think I actually knew real flavor. And now I know flavor, and and I'm going to grab it after our second segment with the Flavor Bible, and want to talk about that a little bit. I love that book. I thought that book was going to teach me everything, but we'll talk about that later. So we're about time to make a pizza.
Perfect.
So for everybody who this might be their first show, one of the premise of the show is the guest tells me what their favorite food is, and I make a gluten and dairy-free pizza. And Sherry's favorite food or meal is?
Which is hilarious. I had to really think through this because, I'm coming here telling you about how to eat healthy and how to track your taste buds and, eat real foods. And then I tell you, I want you to make me my comfort food meal. So that's the thing too. Like we just said, there's stories behind food. There's, lots of comfort and psychology around eating. So I gave you my comfort food, which I always asked for on my birthday growing up. And that was meatloaf and mashed potatoes.
Well, you were going to get a meatloaf and mashed potato pizza. And
Perfect.
So tell me just a little bit about, you said your mom had a recipe. What was her recipe?
Well, her recipe was like my recipe. Like when I got old enough to learn how to cook and I wanted my mom to show me how to make meatloaf, she was like, you just put all this stuff in the blender and you whip it all up with the ketchup and you pour it under the meat and you add an egg and breadcrumbs and mix it up and then put it in the oven. She never had a recipe.
Okay, so which is the best way to make meatloaf, actually. So.
And it tasted the same to me every time, so she knew what she was doing, but...
Your meatloaf was never gray, was it?
No.
Okay. I grew up... The woman who raised me made meatloaf, and I kid you not, if I had something that was gray right now, I'd show you what kind. It was like the gray of this knife right here. It was gray. Every time it was gray and it was dry. And it was until I was in my early 20s where I actually knew what meat. Yeah, I don't know what happened. And funny thing is, I was at this event last week, and the woman next to me were talking about meatloaf. I think I was talking about the show coming up. And she had gray meatloaf too. And Rich, didn't she text her mom to find out why it was gray? Right there, I think it was crappy meat or I don't know what it was, but I never really liked meatloaf growing up because it was disgusting and gray.
Well, most people didn't. That's why I was like, I don't understand. I love meatloaf. My mom must have done a really good job.
She did, and she put green peppers in it. Anyways, we're not doing that. So I'm gonna head over here and we're gonna talk about what we are doing. Okay. First, I'm going to start with our sauce. So we're making a dairy-free pizza, and when you have to make a dairy-free pizza, you're going to want lots of flavor because you don't have the cheese. Which, being dairy-free, I am slightly biased, but I think the cheese makes even bad pizza taste good because it's cheese. Okay. I think I'm a more pure non-cheese person now because kind of I have to be. So first, we're starting with a potato puree. So what I did here is I took some Yukon Gold potatoes, I boiled them up. I put them through a ricer, and if you don't know what a ricer is, when I put this recipe on the website, I have a picture of the ricer and me putting the potatoes through the ricer. What it basically does is makes them nice and smooth, and it's better than mashing. You don't get all those big pieces. Now, this potato puree pretty much is heavy cream and butter that you add to your potatoes. Being dairy-free, I cannot have heavy cream and butter, so I use Earth Balance for my butter, and then for my, which I don't have it out here, for the heavy cream, I will get Ripple. There's quite a few different brands. And thank you, Rich. I use Ripple, half and half. I had never tried it before. Yeah, almost everyone I've tried, and you have to get the one that is not sweetened with vanilla or sugar or anything. And most of them have something in it because they're really supposed to be creamer. And you can't really buy plant-based heavy cream, but this was the closest that I got, and it's a little sweet and it's a little coconutty, and nobody wants coconut. I personally do not want coconut in my potato puree. So what I did is I took this, I put it in a saucepan, I added some chicken stock to it, some butter to it, and I took 2 cloves of garlic and let the garlic seep in there, and it probably simmered for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then I mixed it in with the potatoes. And so all that flavor is gone. So you really have to, either garlic or onion powder will get rid of the flavor in that. Excuse me. And so now we have the star of the show. This meatloaf, if you can see, has veggies in it. It has carrots. It has celery. It is 3 types of meat. It's kind of like a meatball. If you don't want to make a meatball out of just ground beef, because it's going to be a very dry and crumbly meatball. So as with meatballs, this is ground pork, ground veal, which adds a lusciousness to it, and then the ground beef. Equal amounts of all 3. And then egg for a binder. And then most meatloaf recipes call for breadcrumbs. And as a gluten-free person, I can use breadcrumbs. I just use gluten-free, and we make our own breadcrumbs, so those are in there too. Yay. And there's some garlic, there's some onion. This recipe, I usually start with a recipe and then I work my way around that. It wanted you to put ketchup in there, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't put ketchup in there. But it does have the ketchup brown sugar topping on it. So we got our meatloaf. And I'm going to add some bacon because this is basically the entire meal. So we have mashed potatoes, meatloaf, and green beans. And I love green beans and bacon. So
I love green beans with my meatloaf.
Yes, this is the meal right here. And so this bacon is going to add a smokiness. This is actually house cured, and I say house because Rich makes it. It is really delicious homemade bacon. And so we're going to put this in the oven, let it cook, and then when it comes, almost forgot my special drizzle here. This is the one thing I feel like this is a guilty pleasure. This is the ketchup and brown sugar.
Pretty much that whole pizza looks like a guilty pleasure to me.
Yeah,
but
it
we're
is a
gonna-
guilty pleasure. But this is all real food.
Right.
And there's really not a ton. There's some calories here, a little bit of fat. There's not a ton of crap though. So we're gonna put this in the oven, we're gonna cook it, and then we're gonna take these beans, which have been deep fried, which is no coating or anything, just deep fried, and we're gonna put them on top. And when we get back, we're gonna enjoy some pizza.
Victoria's gluten-free Gastro Gab will return after a word from our sponsors and partners. Victoria's gluten-free Gastro Gab is brought to you by Victoria's Gluten-Free Kitchen, makers of award-winning pizza crust, breads, buns, ready-to-bake pizzas, and garlic breads, sold in retailers and served in fine restaurants all along the Front Range. Visit our website at victoriasglutenfreekitchen.com to find a retailer or restaurant partner near you, or to order our products online. Victoria's Gluten-Free Kitchen, free of gluten, intolerant of average. Nothing goes better with pizza than beer, and Victoria's Gluten-Free Gastro Gab proudly serves beers provided by Colorado's only dedicated gluten-free brewer, Holidaily Brewing. Visit their tap house in Golden, or find a retailer or restaurant near you by visiting their website, holidailybrewing.com. The right knife does make a difference. All demonstrations and product preparation for Victoria's Gluten-Free Gastro Gab is done with knives provided by Element Knife Company. Find the right knife for you by visiting elementknife.com. Victoria's Gluten-Free Kitchen products are made with only the finest of ingredients, including locally made Colorado Mills sunflower oil, delivered directly to our kitchen by Healthy Harvest. Check them both out at comills.com and healthyharvestnongmo.com.
Welcome back. It's time to eat some pizza. So we have our meatloaf pizza out of the oven. So now I'm going to take our flash fried green beans. I'm going to cut them up with my knife, kind of small, because I want a green bean in every bite. This is going to add a little bit of crunch, and there has to be green on everything. I just can't eat a greenless meal. And you're going to feel better because you're eating green beans with your bacon and your meatloaf and your potato puree. So this is going to satisfy all the vegetable lovers in the family. So, okay. So this is the meatloaf and mashed potatoes meal of your dreams. Now I'm going to cut the pizza into ace.
I love how beautiful your crusts come out.
Thank
So
you.
golden on the edges.
Thank you. That's
Chewy in the middle.
crispy on the outside, chewy on the inside.
Yep.
That's always been the goal, because that's what I remembered pizza being. I don't remember pizza being, I don't know, like cardboard.
Like a cracker.
Yo, I'll just eat the box. You eat the pizza, I'll eat the box. Be all set. I felt like that many times during my gluten-free journey when everybody else was eating pizza. Okay, you get the first slice.
Thank you.
Uh-oh, your beans fell off your slice, Rich. I'm gonna hook you up here. Okay, so eating pizza is not great for the audio portion of this, but know that we are trying to fill the space with words while we eat. And eating with your mouth full is acceptable on this show.
Just because we need the audio interest.
Yeah, we need the audio, yeah. Okay.
It's gotta
get my
sound good.
slice.
Looks delicious.
So during the break, we were talking more about flavor, and we were talking about the book that I bought back in, God, when was that? When did I buy this? 2010 or something, called The Flavor Bible. Flavor Bible. It's about the size of a Bible. You think you're going to learn stuff. And it was when it was back when I was trying to I was teaching myself how to cook and everything I could learn about cooking. And I could not put flavors together. I didn't think I could. I didn't think I could go beyond a recipe. And then I would actually do a recipe, and I'd be like, this isn't good. Back then, I thought, if it was a recipe put together by another human and it was on the internet, it had to be good. Yeah. I'm like, the recipe said to do this, and I do it.
I did exactly what it said.
Exactly, and it didn't turn out. And so I saw this book, and I'm like, oh, this is it. This is the holy grail of cooking. And I open it up, and I look through it, and I'm like, damn, this isn't going to help me do anything. It's a cool book if you want to know what goes well with other, it's like, we're working on an anchovy pizza, and I did some internet research and looked in here, and it's like what flavors go, what ingredients, not really flavors,
Right.
but ingredients are flavors.
Right.
So it had some benefit, but it wasn't that, oh my God, now I know how to put flavors together. And so, but I still keep my flavor Bible because
Well, and because you now understand.
it's a pairing guide.
Yeah, and you understand the concept of flavor and what does taste good together, and you know that because you've practiced it, right?
Right, and
You've
that's what I
created
learned.
awareness around what these flavors are doing.
Right.
It needs a little salt. If it's a little too sweet, let's put a little salt. It's a little too flat, let's put a little acid, right? So that's an experiment thing.
And that's what
And it's
cooking
also
is,
a
an
conversation that isn't common. So people don't really have the vocabulary and the thought process to really understand that foods can really just be kind of clumped into these categories, and the goal of a good tasting food is a little bit of each.
of all the
right?
categories. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
you want a little bit of something in every dish. Okay, so we're gonna talk beer now, which there's tons of flavor in holiday beer. So we were sipping on some pumpkin ale, which surprisingly does not taste terribly like pumpkin, so it's good. It's all the holiday beers are good. So we had this conversation in the break as to which of these beers is going to pair the best with the Meatloaf pizza. So there's two ideas here. The Riva Stout is a very heavy and might go well with a heavier. Sometimes you want heavy, but then the favorite blonde is very light, so that would be a good counterbalance to the heaviness of the pizza. So we have 2 glasses. Well, you have 3. Look at you.
I know, I'm kind of slacking here. Sorry, I was talking too much, evidently.
So we're gonna try the
So
pizza.
I have mine to try. I'm going to try the pumpkin too with it,
Yeah, you could. I don't know about that.
but it's not real pumpkin-y, so.
The bacon was a really good. You get the smokiness right off the bat.
Oh my goodness, that is so good.
This is Meatloaf meal on a pizza.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna
That's
try.
the whole dinner in a bite.
It's a whole dinner and a bite.
Taking me back to every birthday party I ever had.
Okay, I do like
Right.
I like the blonde, the favorite blonde with it.
They're citrusy.
Yeah, it's very. It seems like the citrus is even more pronounced. So I'm gonna take another bite.
I'm going to try
And
the
then I'm
same
going
one
to do
as
the
you.
stout. I'm going to talk with my mouth full, which is allowed. Okay, now I'm trying the stout.
I think I lose a little bit of the meatloaf with the blonde, though.
It's still too. The citrus is a little too strong.
Takes over the meatloaf, kind of that comforting.
Okay, I'm down with the stout with the meatloaf, definitely.
Okay, let me try that.
See, this is a perfect example if you want to understand flavor. I mean, really, if you think about pairing wines, pairing beers with food, really gets you thinking about what flavors you're tasting, what flavors you didn't even think you were going to taste until they paired together.
Yeah, and you know what? It's the conversation that I keep saying. Like, I try to correlate this when I talk to people about flavor. I'm like, if you've tasted wine, beer is the same thing. If you've gone through that experience of using all of your senses, you look at it, you smell it, you pick up the nuances, and then you pair it with your food, right? Like, typically what you're looking for is something that either creates a whole new delicious flavor in your mouth, or it pairs it and enhances one flavor or the other, right? Like, you're looking for that beneficial flavor combination. It's like if we could put that same reverence into our meals and into our, what we're consuming throughout the day, and, having sour as a beverage with, like, put that same reverence into just your food alone. That in and of itself will make your food more delicious. And if you're using the right ingredients, more balanced in nutrition. Like, it's that same concept, just put it into your food.
Well, I think that in my experience, my cooking journey, being able to make mistakes was the most important thing that I could do, because I learned, making mistakes from a technique standpoint, and then making mistakes from a combination, combining ingredient standpoint. And when I make sauces now, generally I don't ever use a recipe. I might go, if it's a sauce I haven't made before, I may go look 2 or 3 recipes, see what ingredients we're using, and then I decide what I want to put in. And I start, and let's say it's a mayonnaise-based sauce. I'll put the mayonnaise in, I'll add a few things, I'll taste it, and I'll just keep adding till I'm getting the flavor that I want. And that's how you know what, maybe you're putting too much of this or too much of that. You're looking for the balance. And it's obviously, to my palate, It's like, does it need more acid? Does it need to be a little sour? Does it need more salt? You know as you build.
Right.
It's like when I made the potato puree, it was the same thing.
Really
it's like
good, by the
when
way.
I put those, I put the ripple and the chicken stock and the butter and the garlic together, what's going to happen? I wasn't sure. I'm like, Rich, hey, how about if I steep the garlic in here? And he's like, okay.
Yeah, no, perfect.
And I've steeped garlic and things before. I didn't know how strong the garlic was going to be, but it pulled all that garlic out and it really absorbed
It's a great
into
way
it.
to do it.
Yeah.
Garlic, to just kind of infuse it in oils or infuse it in liquids. It's a great way to get that subtle flavor.
I do that when I cook spinach. I'll put the oil in the pan, let the cloves steep in there, and then I cook the spinach.
Yeah.
Because if you get too much garlic with spinach is a little bit delicate. It's going to overpower it.
Right.
But steeping is a good way. But I didn't know what I was going to. I do know at this point in my abilities that I could probably fix anything I messed up. I mean, sometimes I saw a thing on Facebook. You've probably seen it. I forget what site it is, but it shows you all these kitchen hacks and stuff. And there was one, you put too much salt in, they put a potato in there. It's like, you're not coming back from too much salt. You're just not.
It's really hard to come back from too much salt.
No,
But-
or too sweet. One of those two.
Right, you can
but
always
try.
taste as you go, and that's one of the things that you learn as you cook is you can always add more. You can't take any out, right?
That is so true.
So,
And
what do you wish the Flavor Bible had taught you? Because I'm hoping that's what I'm teaching people.
I wish it would have taught me what exactly this is obvious, meatloaf and mashed potatoes, but I made a Thai pizza for Karen, our very first show, and all those flavors went together so well, and I would have never thought of putting those flavors together until I did a lot of experimentation. I think the goal when I bought this is I wanted to be able to cook without a recipe. I was watching Bobby Flay and Jada and all those chefs on the Food Network, and they would just, like on Chopped, they just whip
Wing
this
it.
stuff up. And
what
I'm
I
like,
love to
how
do.
do they know how to do this? I wanted to be able to do that, cook without a recipe. And I didn't feel like this gave it to me, and it's not this book's fault. I guess that's the whole point. This is a great book. I skipped 5 steps.
This is not a beginner's flavor book. This is once you understand the concepts, which
just enhances your ability and knowledge.
Chefs have this gift. Like I look at it as this combination of art and science. Chefs are gifted with this ability to understand flavor. We don't even know how or why, right? Rich I'm sure can attest to this. Like you get it. And a lot of it is experimentation, right? When you're learning, you're putting ingredients together and you're understanding that a little bit squeeze of a lemon will brighten something up, and you understand what the fat does, and you understand dry heat and moist heat and all the things. So you're kind of learning it practically.
Right.
But you become this artist. You become this just knowing, what colors / flavors to pull off of your palate and mix together and make it taste good and interesting. Whereas we don't think of that as healthy eating. We think of that as indulgence eating, right?
No, that's not indulgent.
But like people that, want a lot of flavor, they figure they're going to a fancy restaurant and they're going to get all the things and they're not going to worry about what the ingredients are. So that's where they get their flavor. In their everyday eating, they're not thinking about flavor. They're just eating whatever's convenient and in front of them and what the latest and greatest, health fad is telling them to do. Whereas the science of things is when you get sick and you're desperate and the doctors can't help you, kind of like my story, and you have to look at food and all of a sudden you're staring at, these ingredients as opposed to packaged foods, and you don't know how to make it taste good. The nutritionists are telling you what to eat. So for me, this guidance on using flavor to eat nutritionally balanced is this combination. Of all my chef skills and everything I've experienced in nutrition on my own, and, educating on both aspects, really, and how flavor can be this just joyful guide for us, really.
Oh, it's fun.
Yeah.
And that's what I need. I skipped a step before I got here. I had to actually learn about flavor. I didn't learn about flavor, and so I started experimenting, putting things together, making mistakes, figuring out what works, what I like, what I don't like, and now it all makes sense.
Right.
But you have to be able to experiment. And I think the hardest thing is when you have a family and you are the person responsible for cooking, it's difficult to experiment, at least I thought back then, because, what if dinner gets screwed up?
Nobody wants to eat it, right?
But you know what? That's what a box of gluten-free mac and cheese and some other stuff, you always have that on standby.
Right.
Because if you don't allow yourself the ability to experiment, you're never going to become a better cook.
It's very true. And that's it's a giant step for people.
Oh, it is. And I think
in this world that we live in, I mean, when I wrote my chapter in the Ready to Fly book, like I talked a lot about, I grew up in that, banquet TV dinners were just starting to become popular. And
God, the apple and cinnamon in those things was so good. And the cornbread, if you mix the apple and the cinnamon with the cornbread, or if you mix the apple and the cinnamon with the spaghetti and meatballs with a little bit of cornbread.
See, I just remember hot chocolate pudding and being whoa, why is
I didn't like
pudding?
that. I was the apples and cinnamon and cornbread and
But that was the start of the whole
started this whole
processed food, and that was when women were feeling like they needed to step into the roles of career, and men and being
men couldn't possibly decide they could cook.
Yeah, so it started this trend of but ironically, all the most of the well-known chefs are men. So how did that all happen?
Yeah, I don't even understand that. So I'm sitting here eating all the beans.
It's really good. I really liked this stout paired with the pizza.
Have you had the stout before?
No.
I like the stout better.
I do too. The stout. Yeah. The stout's the way to go for sure.
It kind of picks up the smokiness of the bacon and.
This was way too citrus.
Yeah. This kind of masked the.
Yeah.
You definitely need something brighter, and more veggie pizza would probably go well with that.
Yeah, it's interesting how the beer can bring out flavors, obviously they're not in the pizza, but it feels like they're in the pizza because they're in the beer. So that was an interesting experiment. I like that.
Yeah, that was really good.
So meatloaf and stout. That's where it is. But the banquet dinners, that is those in the pot pies, and that was made by Banquet too, I think, and fish sticks. Fish sticks.
Yeah. Yes. So we thought it was the best thing because you didn't have to slave away in the kitchen, and so.
Well, in the beginning, it
very easily, me as a parent, I could have very easily raised my child on all processed foods because that's the way the lifestyle is, the stressful lifestyle and the packaged foods and like all the things. So we're getting to this point now where like. My son is not, but I could very easily have a son that's old enough to be an adult and out on his own. And if I never taught him how to cook, he would be completely intimidated by, all of a sudden having these dietary restrictions and all of a sudden having to go into the grocery store and pick up ingredients instead of a box and not know what to do with it, right? So I feel like what we're facing in a lot of ways in this generation that's coming up and kind of on their own. They don't know how to cook.
Ramen. And it's sad, I think that back then in the 70s, the banquet meals that we were talking about, they were actually food. Right. I think they were.
And I don't know that for sure, but I think it probably was because you didn't have all the options, right?
There was a higher probability that it was real food in there and not as many additives and things. Right. But as, by the time you got to the 80s, nothing was food anymore.
Right. And nobody was reading the ingredients and caring.
And now,
plus we're, spraying Roundup on all of our wheat and making us all sick, so.
I wonder if there's somebody who has an old package of, do a Google image search for an old 1970s banquet and we could see the rest of the ingredients.
No, that would be cool.
That would be very interesting.
It's out there somewhere.
I always say that in the 70s we had real food still. We were in transition toward mid 70s, late 70s into the 80s. I don't know that to be true. I think I would have believed that.
Right.
But pork chops tasted different in the 70s. Oh. Today's pork chops are, I don't even know what they are.
Yeah, and Julia Childs wrote about chicken itself. She saw this transition of what the flavor of chicken, just the chicken without anything added to it, had completely changed in her lifetime of cooking, right?
Oh,
I read this in the Dorito Effect book. We went to this when the white meat phase came out, and it was really, a big deal to eliminate red meat from your diet, and you have to eat chicken. Well, then all of a sudden, the demand was for this juicier, meatier, big boobed chicken, right? And so the chickens literally had been changed to be, mass produced. So they would have these big breasts, these big white juicy breasts that, that's all the chicken needed to be.
Somebody jumping on right now be like, whoa, what did I stumble upon? White juicy breasts.
It's what it is, what we all want.
Yes, it is. I mean, I remember the chicken breast revolution, and I'm like, what's wrong with the legs and thighs? That's where all the flavor is.
And the flavor completely disappeared, even from the breast, from the chicken, because that's the way, the food science world took it. And And that's what's happened to our, our plants, the vegetables, even the organic stuff. I mean, it's certainly a step better, but we're killing the soils. We're killing the soils that provide the nutrients that also provide the flavor. A lot of these companies that are promoting their products, whether it be their chewy gel, their chewy vitamins or their shakes or their, energy, whatever it is. Again, there is a need, so I understand why they're here, but the issue that I have is not facing the real problem. It's not facing the problem that they're all promoting, well, our soils are depleted and so we need these nutrients. And yes, I agree. But why aren't we going back to the soil and fixing the soil instead of creating these artificial vitamins and things that we're putting in, some non-food thing and feeding it to people to try to make them feel better?
Because there's too much money against that.
It's true.
The industry...
It's sad, but true.
Yeah, it's not going to change quickly. Consumers are going to cause it to change. So what you're doing, getting people to realize that some of the stuff that they're eating is not good for them, that there are better options, and then as consumers demand better options, then there are changes. We've seen this in the last 10, 15 years with gluten-free especially, and with just...
Thank God we got you.
Yeah, and then knowing, more companies are getting rid of high fructose corn syrup. They're getting rid of preservatives. They're getting rid of these things because the consumer spoke. The consumer is the most, powerful
That's really true.
Force that we have. And so the more that we can educate the consumer, then eventually we'll see change.
Right.
But in the end, it's all about money.
Well, it always is. And one of the biggest and simplest concepts for people to understand when I talk about flavor equaling nutrition is if you think about, what we've done to the tomato that we're shipping from California to New Jersey. And the thing that has to happen when you go from California to New Jersey is you have to pick it unripe and have to have it be still red and shiny and bright and waxy when it gets to New Jersey. And that's a total made up, actual shipping thing. But you get the gist. It has to last in transition. So it's hard. And everyone out there knows what it is like to experience one of these shelf-stable tomatoes versus one that you grew in your backyard or that someone grew in their backyard. The flavor is completely different.
Oh, yeah. Completely.
And when the flavor is different, the nutrition is different.
Right.
So we're eating these bland vegetables, and we're trying to get our kids to eat these bland vegetables, saying how good they are for them, and the reality is they don't have the flavor and they don't have the nutrition that they should because they're not coming from these rich soils that we used to have.
Right. But
that's the sad part.
It is sad. But to counter that, I think that if you know how to add additional flavor to the tomato or to whatever, the potato, whatever it is, so that it tastes good and you're still getting whatever nutrition it does have. It's like not dipping your broccoli in ranch. Well, what do you have to do to the broccoli? Let's assume it's organic broccoli. Maybe it tastes a little bit better. What do you have to do to get kids to eat that? You've got to find some flavors that you can put on that are natural. What that is, I'm not sure. Every person is different.
Well, yeah.
But I'm happy with broccoli. Just put a little salt on there and or garlic and I'm good to go. But I love broccoli.
Well, and I think part of what's happening too is that we, again, this generation that's kind of now becoming these young parents and they're feeding their kids. Maybe they didn't have the experience of eating a lot of vegetables. Maybe, one of the most important things we can do is at least get the kids started on it, right? Mm-hmm. And keep introducing it. Because again, if your body starts to recognize that you feel better with bitters and that your digestion is improving because you're eating more bitter. You might not be making that conscious thought in your connection in your mind, but you'll start to crave broccoli. You'll start to crave that bitter flavor. And to answer your question, what do you do with a broccoli that doesn't taste good? To me, that's a perfect place to start introducing the spices and the herbs until we get those nutrients back up, to a place. Just get something in there, get those create an interest, right? And do it with something that you're conscious of the ingredients.
Right. And I think that there's ways. One of I haven't made this in a long time, but it was a recipe way back when I was, 30 years ago. It was broccoli with soy sauce, butter, and water chestnuts. And obviously I can't do soy sauce, but I can do tamari. And it was so good in its simplicity. And it wasn't a lot. It's just a little bit of butter, a little tamari, and it was just so good. It's a great way to treat, the butter helps a little. But I always would be higher on the soy sauce than, more of the soy sauce than the butter. But that's so easy. And soy sauce just adds so much flavor.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I'm kind of navigating with this education is, you have to kind of categorize the good ingredients and the bad ingredients, right? So my concept is what I'm calling living flavor. So the closest that your ingredient is to something living, the more beneficial it's going to be because it will have the nutrients behind it. So when you talk about tamari, soy sauce and tamari, they're kind of processed, but there's also this culture involved, right?
Well, they're
it's
fermented. So that's a little
right.
Little
So fermented foods, and people know, kimchi, or they might know that a homemade sauerkraut or even homemade pickles. When they're made from a culture,
pickles. Oh,
but when they're cultured, it's so much different than just a vinegar pickle. Like there's more life to it, is my point, right? It's coming from, real cheeses that are like the European ooey gooey cultured cheeses. Buttermilk, milk before we over pasteurize and over process it is got a lot of good stuff in it, all the probiotics,
Right. So the closer to the source is basically the better.
Right.
And I agree completely. And thank you for the pickle thing. I made some sweet pickles about 3 years ago, and they were so good. I'm going to make some more. We're making pickles rich. I love sweet pickles. But
pickles are yummy. I used to drink pickle juice as a kid.
Did you really?
Yes.
Oh my God, I fed you nearly 53 years on this earth, and I have not found another. But you know what I would do? I would get the pickle juice. I would put vinegar and salt in the pickle juice, and I don't know what the hell was wrong with me.
So something in your body, right? Like if you only thought to think about.
I was drinking this daily, like a glass of it every day. Pickle juice, vinegar, and I had a little bit of salt to it.
Your body needed sour. So, the sour.
I'm not crazy after all. Well, maybe I still am.
Now you can do pickle martinis. Like that.
Well, yeah, me and martinis, and it's so dirty. Like, I'll go and order one, or we'll make them here. It's extremely dirty. East Colfax dirty. That's how dirty I want. And it's actually more more olive juice. And I've done a pickled-tini, and I love those, too. I've done a beet juice martini, too, and that was pretty interesting. Yeah, that was a little weird, but it was still good. But yeah, it's I love my pickle juice and olive juice too. So what is that? If I'm craving
the sour flavors are they're benefit to your digestion. So maybe that was way back then. Somebody telling you
I've had digestive issues since I was little, so maybe it was. But that makes me feel better. I thought I was just weird as hell.
You are.
Which I probably am. Yeah. Okay, good. I found someone else's bourbon. Well, Sherry, this was so much fun. We'll have to have you on again, and we'll really dig deep, talk about,
great.
I think something to talk about would be just basic vegetables, because people don't do vegetables. What herbs and spices you can put on, very simple to make them taste so much better and be appealing to both you and your kids. I think we could have a whole show. We could make a crazy vegetable.
You could even just start with the vegetable itself and break it down into the flavors that you experience in a vegetable before you add anything to it. Well, create that awareness,
that would be
around
fun.
what that is.
We should do that. Definitely.
I would love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Cheers. This has been awesome.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Victoria's Gluten-Free Gastro Gab. Be sure to visit our website at victoriasglutenfreekitchen.com for recipes from today's show and to check out previous episodes. You can also find links to our partner pages or find a retailer or restaurant near you that serves Victoria's Gluten-Free Kitchen products. Thanks for your continued support.